Okay, so this PragerU video really makes me upset, so let's just go through what really is upsetting me, huh? It's really
The
upsetting.
United States had to fight not one, but two wars for its independence. The
Yeah,
first,
you heard that,
of course,
PragerU.
was the Revolutionary War. Can you name the second? It was the War of 1812. Now,
Wow, the war that the United States started. Nice, that was a war of independence, okay.
both wars were against the British. And in both cases, the Americans should have lost. The Revolutionary War is very much celebrated in American history. The second one has all but been forgotten.
Well, actually, the national anthem, the one that the conservatives want everybody to stand for and love, that was written in the War of 1812. It was written on a ship that was watching the bombardment of an American fort. So, just remember that.
But had it been lost, America's history would have been much, much different. The British precipitated the war by failing to recognize the United States as a sovereign nation. For 5 years between 1807 and 1812, they repeatedly disrupted American commerce, boarding American merchant ships, capturing their sailors, over 5,000 of them, and forcing them to work on British ships.
This is true,
Finally,
but I mean, there was
President
also
James
pretty
Madison
much
said,
everybody was doing this.
enough. And on June 18th, 1812, Congress declared war on Britain.
Yep.
The euphoria didn't last long, and for good reason. The Americans had no viable strategy, no standing army to speak of, no generals worthy of the rank, very small navy, a wholly inadequate supply of munitions. It was a different story on the British side. They had all the men, ships, generals, and admirals they needed, and then some. If these upstart Yankees wanted war, the British were only too happy to accommodate them. Things went pretty much as expected, one American defeat after another, culminating in the burning of Washington, D.C.
Yep,
The great
that happened.
prize of the war was not the tiny American capital or even the larger nearby city of Baltimore. The prize the British wanted was a gateway to the American West, the city at the mouth of the Mississippi.
Okay, so that's where you see it. It's not a war of independence. It's a war for a city. That's what they're framing it as, correct?
River, New Orleans. If Britain controlled this key southern port, it could check American expansion, confining it to the eastern half of the continent for the foreseeable future.
Now I have to see this, okay? Now, if you think about this just for like a minute or so, what PragerU is saying is that it's part of America's independence to conquer the West. That's what they're pretty much saying, because they're saying that this is a war of independence, a war to keep their independence, right? Britain was not like, we'll make you a colony again. That's not what he's claiming. He's saying that Britain wanted this little city, right? Which would have stopped American expansion and greatly reduced the genocide that happened in the Western United States today. So just remember that. Part of the genocide, the expansionism, all that is apparently, according to PragerU, part of American independence.
Take New Orleans. The British amassed an enormous sea and land force, 60 ships, 10,000 men. And what could the Americans offer by way of defense? Enter Andrew Jackson, one of the most remarkable figures in American history. Born in 1767 in the territories of the Carolinas, Jackson first encountered the British during the Revolutionary War. His memories were not happy ones. His mother and his two brothers died in the war, and Jackson himself was left with a permanent scar, the gift of a British officer who slashed him with his sword when the teenage boy refused to clean his boots.
So yes, remember, when it's the people who are Americans who refuse to be bootlickers, that is good, right? When it's Andrew Jackson, the slave owner, who's refusing the authority, that's good, okay? When it's anybody who is refusing American superiority and, refusing to be a bootlicker of the American imperialist cause, that is bad. That's PragerU for you right there.
Self-educated, Jackson settled in Nashville, Tennessee. There he became a frontier lawyer and, after Tennessee was admitted to the Union, served briefly as its sole congressman, then as a senator representing the new state. Though he had no formal military training, Jackson was elected Major General of the Tennessee Militia and gained fighting experience leading several successful campaigns against the Indians of the region.
Again, genocide.
He inspired both great loyalty and great fear in the men under his command. Loyalty because he fought beside them, enduring every hardship they endured, and fear because he demanded strict military discipline.
See, remember, this goes directly into the point that I made like pretty much a minute ago, which is when it's American authority, it's good. When it's non-American authority, it's bad. Okay? Just remember that.
The inherently rebellious, don't tread on me nature of the frontiersman.
Of course. Don't tread on me. That's what they're going to say. Don't tread on me, right? Don't get on my authority unless you're an American. Unless you're an American, you cannot put any boot on me. Unless you're not part of the government, unless you're not Andrew Jackson, you're not allowed to imprison me.
Under his command, this was no mean feat. But Jackson had never faced a foe like the British, a highly disciplined, battle-tested army.
He literally faced the British in the Revolutionary War. You said it yourself.
On his side of the ledger, the American general had a motley assortment of volunteers, militiamen, free men of color, Indians, and regulars, joined by legendary New Orleans pirate Jean Lafitte and his pirate band.
Yep.
The American force was still less than half of what the British had in numbers and far less in combat experience. But for all their deficiencies, Jackson's men had three talents he fully exploited. They knew the terrain, they knew how to dig, and they knew how to shoot. The Battle of New Orleans began.
You hear that? They knew how to shoot.
And in earnest, at dawn, January 8th, 1815.
Remember, this is literally after the war had already ended. Now, of course, the news hadn't reached them yet, but I have to remember that this war would have meant nothing. This battle would have meant nothing to the war, because the war had already been lost for the British. Okay, well, not necessarily, but the war was already over by this time, so this battle was, in essence, meaningless.
Overconfident British had no idea what they were in for.
That's true.
Wading through the mud of Louisiana swamps and thwarted by Jackson's hastily constructed but formidable ramparts, one British charge after another was cut down by deadly accurate American artillery and rifle fire.
Because they knew how to shoot.
When it was over, it amounted to the worst defeat in British military history.
Now, this is kind of debatable and whatnot, but I'm not going to debate it. I mean, you can just sort of look it up yourself. There's all sorts of things. I think one person said that the Battle of Singapore was probably worse for the British, and there's other stuff, but, it was still pretty bad. But remember, it was also meaningless. These people died for a meaningless imperialist war, everybody on both sides.
No two accounts of the battle would agree on the exact casualty count, but all agreed it was stunningly high. According to one British infantry captain, 3 generals, 7 colonels, 75 officers, a total of 1,781 officers and soldiers had fallen in a few minutes. The American losses amounted to no more than a dozen dead. The War of 1812?
That's right. No more than a dozen dead. And it's kind of interesting how, this isn't really that important, but when it's talking about the British numbers, it's giving you an actual number, right? But when it's talking about the Americans, it's letters. That's, to me, kind of funny and sort of misleading, I think. I don't really know how it misleads, but I have a feeling that's just a bit misleading. Yeah.
America's second war of independence began badly and only got worse, but it ended with one of the greatest victories in American military history.
It had already ended by then. Just shut up, PragerU, please.
It made Jackson a national hero and set up a successful run for the presidency 13 years later. Even more, it guaranteed the western expansion of the United States would proceed without interruption.
That's right. It guaranteed genocide, pretty much. That's what they're saying. I don't really necessarily agree that it guaranteed that they would expand or not, but if it did, then it guaranteed the genocide, so yeah. Nice job, Jackson.
I'm Brian Kilmeade for Prager University. Thank you for watching this video.
Also, this last point is really annoying, okay?
PragerU videos free. Please consider making a tax-deductible donation.
tax deductible? How is PragerU, obviously a political thing, okay, is tax deductible to donate to them? What sort of world do we live in, really? I know this is sort of meaningless, this entire thing, but this just really upset me. And I know this isn't really that coherent, but I don't think anybody else is gonna do this, so that's why I'm doing it. And maybe it gets my word out there, huh? It's probably a shit look at all this, but it's nice to me. So, thank you very much.